Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Deeply Human Leading. I'm Leanne Del Carpio, and I'm joined with Gretchen Terry-Leonard, and we're so excited today to talk about raising humans in the age of intelligent machines. I mean, we are both parents. Many of us listening are probably professionals. You may be a leader. You may be a parent yourself. You also just may have young people that you care about, that you love, that you want the best for them, a niece, a nephew, or you may be on a school board. There are so many questions around how do we help guide the next generation to really thrive in this age of advancing intelligence and automation and robotics at a speed that we can't really comprehend. And so that's what we wanted to kind of dig into today. Gretchen, remember when, gosh, about, I think a couple of weeks ago, mid-February, right? I'm going to look down at something that many of you may have be familiar with. Matt Schumer, who has been in the AI startup space for about 6 years. He had a post that he wrote that went viral on X. And I'm going to read a little bit of it because it really grabbed my attention. And I want to ask your reactions when I sent this to you, right? It was entitled Something Big is Happening. You may have seen it. It was also all over the news. But he starts it off by saying, think back to February 2020. If you were paying close attention, you might have noticed a few people talking about some kind of virus spreading overseas, but most of us weren't paying close attention. The stock market was doing great, your kids were in school, you were going to restaurants, shaking hands, planning trips. If someone had told you that they were stockpiling toilet paper, you would have thought they'd been spending too much time in a weird corner of the internet, right? I remember when that began. Then over the course of about 3 weeks, just like dominoes, right, the entire world changed. And it goes on to kind of say, we are in, and actually he says this, I think we're in this seems overblown phase of something much, much, much bigger than COVID. And he said he's spent 6 years building a startup in the AI space, and he had really grappled with how he talks, how he answers questions in polite dinner time conversations. You go out to dinner with the neighbors, or you're at the soccer field for a soccer game, and people are like, so I know you're doing something in AI. What's up with this AI thing? And you give some sort of polite answer, and then you realize things are moving so fast that you can't even explain how fast it's going. And it just really hit me because I had a moment like that yesterday actually with a group of friends, and I was trying to articulate how much had changed even in the last 30, 60, 90 days, which is
I mean,
mind
even two
blowing.
weeks a week,
Yeah.
we're really the brain is having a difficult time clocking the milestones of change. I remember when you sent this to me, and it's sort of like I remember the day that Lady Di passed away, and I remember where I was and what I was wearing, and I was so, those moments, and I have to say, so Matt, you wrote a beautiful piece, and you did it in a way with such care and love as not to try to scare people, but inform people. But there was the before read Matt Schumer's piece that you sent me, and then there was an after, and I was distinctly different after. And then I went to a 1-year-old's birthday party, and I had consumed a lot of information about AI, and you and I had, decided to really start doing this, on a very, uh, heartfelt level. And I felt I was in a room with like 60 friends, some people I knew and some people I didn't know. And I was a bit stunned, and I thought, I feel like I know something nobody else knows right now. Right. I mentally am stockpiling toilet paper. I'm like, wait a second, things are really changing.
I didn't have the words, even though we had talked about like how odd that kind of experience is. But even yesterday, I thought, well, I found a little more language, and I can maybe speak to a couple of things that have happened in my own experience over the last month, how quickly things are changing. But it's, I think the rate of change is that exponential curve that we look at, that hockey stick curve, and our brains are just notoriously bad at the exponential function. It's like, and some of the
You can
questions.
go 10x, 100x, but 10x is almost unfathomable, really. So I agree with you. I do want to say that I read it and I was very moved by it. And then I had my husband read it and he was like, yeah, yeah, I'm like, we're digesting this differently. I feel more concerned. And he, I wondered if he, if he actually really felt the way I felt. And so, I must say I had some fear. Like the first reaction was well written. I appreciate the tone, but then I felt fear. And the fear came not for myself. The fear came for my son. And so that was the primary feeling was what is going to happen to my son, his education and his future.
Yeah. And it's something that I also went straight to. And I appreciated Matt's approach because it was very much around, hey, I want to explain to those that I love that something is about to completely turn your world upside down. And I left that luncheon yesterday going, I really care for these people that I just had lunch with. And I somehow was not able to communicate the gravity of it, but I also didn't want to have them leave so freaked out and unable to do something about it too, you know?
Right. Right. There's the first of all, letting it land, right? Somatically letting it land and thinking, if this is real, even 10% of it, like I often think, okay, in percentages, if 10% of what is predicted is actually true, that's still seismic, number one. Even if you say, okay, it's never as bad or as great, it's somewhere in between. But even if 10% of it's true, it's seismic on a level we cannot conceptualize. So there's that. So then there's the okay, but I'm okay and I'm safe right now because at first you feel really unsafe and you think fear, you're trying to absorb it. And then you sit with it and then the reality is you're like, okay, now I'm formulating based on the context of what I know. What does that look like? And your brain is starting to look for ways of managing, ways of pivoting, ways of being flexible. So, is that something you experienced when you read it? Like in stages, almost like grief, but instead of grief, it was managing change. It was that change management stage.
Yes, and I have written papers on disruption and taught disruption and leadership development since 2014. So I had that same human reaction that anybody does, but I guess I had the additional layer of, oh, he's articulating a changing context in a way that I really appreciate that will hopefully help more people understand how much basic assumptions on the way that we've organized our world since post World War II, global economic order, how they're fundamentally turning upside down in a way that's very grounded and clear. So in leadership development and in organizational development, you know this, Gretchen, from our work together in the corporate environment, um, what great leadership looks like is highly contextual. So if a company is in a turnaround situation, you need a certain kind of leader to lead that turnaround. If a company is in a high growth phase, that's a different kind of leadership that you need to bring to the table. We can dial up those own leadership capabilities depending on the context. But I'm a really big believer in what I call contextual intelligence. Like, let's build understanding of how our context is changing so our organization can not only be positioned well, but that we as leaders can bring the leadership mindsets or skill sets that are needed. Well, the same thing is true to help my family understand, or my friends or my community to understand how this context is changing. But I don't have that mental framework of like I'm doing leadership development over lunch with friends, or and also my daughters are 19 and 21, and I think it's like almost like a, oh god, here comes mom with her AI thing again, like a little whole like full body head roll or eye roll because it's like I don't, and actually we were out to dinner with one of my daughter's good friends, and I brought up some of the things that had changed in the last month that we've talked about that are really gonna put pressure on whether these kids are getting degrees that are going to be meaningful and they'll be able to actually get a job in these areas. And she got a little, um, well, just a little concerned that it would be, that would create a sense of panic for her friend. And I'm like, I'm really trying to find the right tone to say, this is dramatically changing. Um, but if we don't grapple with it now, start that change management process that you're talking about, we won't get to like how we can adapt to it later. Like we have to kind of digest it in, and if you haven't thought about changing context, then you have to start to plant those seeds on the changing context in a couple conversations so that people can start to understand how the rate is changing.
Well, and just also even some, mental time travel. What if you woke up tomorrow and everyone spoke a different language? How would you like just these things where you're thinking, okay, that would never happen? Well, no, the language will still be the language of your area, but the context has changed. And so the language will need to change. So just asking yourselves something that seems absurd. Well, what would I do if all of our electricity went away? Or if, just asking yourself sort of in simple ways like survival techniques. These are deep human, and going back to deeply human opportunities for us to connect with our somatic system, to connect with our body and the wisdom of our body and what our body is telling us. Um, Maybe even distance and recommit from information overload. Don't go too far into discovery, but just let it land. Distance yourself, walk outside, get some sunshine, then dive back into technology or information about AI. So I think it's also not just um, boiling yourself in it and thinking I've got to know everything right now, but
Right.
I'm going to absorb at the rate I can handle and metabolize the gravity of the change that's coming, because that's also when your brilliance comes in, when you have rested and you're just sitting there. It's usually a shower or a walk, or you're unpacking the groceries from the refrigerator and you're putting these away, things like that.
I actually, after reading Matt Schumer's piece and then observing a couple different situations where I was also feeling in that same exact spot and wanting to help loved ones, not, and also, by the way, you and I are not like, we're trying to keep up with this as much as
Oh,
possible
yeah.
as well. So it's not like we're these experts in AI, but what we are experts in is how to anchor our own somatic, our own nervous system, and bring our best of our leadership to the table in a changing context. That's something that we've done, both of us professionally in different ways. So it
Mhm.
may be a little bit more attuned to that. But I got really doubled down on my commitment to kind of creating, I'd call it like a kitchen table kind of conversation. The problem is my girls are older and they're not really at my kitchen table so much anymore. We used to, literally sit down and have these dialogues after school, right? When they were in junior high. Then once they start driving, then you never see them again. But anyway, but
Well, I
before
just
that,
want you to point out that is a very girl thing, because I'm trying to have a conversation with my 11-year-old boy
oh,
and he's
really?
like he's like monosyllabic. He's like, fine, yes, no,
Could be. And
mom.
there's also individual differences. We
Yeah.
understand that too. But I really want more wherever I can get it, like, kitchen table conversations, WhatsApp video conversations, whatever they need to look like these days, where we're talking about, hey, did you see this post? Did you see this latest thing? What does that mean to you? And contrasting it with what they're learning in school. I have a story I want to share with you, but I want to first ask, what are they teaching about AI or not teaching about AI in the school environment? Because he's in sixth grade
He's in
right
sixth
now.
grade going into seventh, and this is a school that does hold paradox. They are very traditional, and he does a lot of work with pencil in hand. But they also do some work on iPads, but it's not either or. It's a combination of both. He's he's really getting into vibe coding. And if anyone knows what that
What is
is,
that? Yeah, tell
okay,
everybody.
so he wanted to make a video game with Roblox of his own, like develop his own little space. And uh, I still don't understand, but I helped him build it. And so this is what vibe coding is. You can do something. Now, this is not ideal because you really do need the context to understand. But what vibe coding allows is for non-coding people to create things that would normally require code, and it's done by an agent. So I used Claude Code as a Claudette, so I used Claude Code and created a terminal on my Apple, and I just said, "Hey, Claude, I would like to help my son. We're going to build a website together for his favorite Roblox." And the thing about Claude, just a little plug for Claude, the reason I think people love them so much and love Claude Anthropic so much is they've baked in the human things that we love, which is it would have like a cute little word like percolating, and it would work on the
Ah,
code, and you would see the code happening. And it would be like, skipping rope. And it would, while it was thinking, it would give this cute little prompt that would just, it's like a little, it's a glimmer, it's
yeah.
that joyful. So it's fun. So he and I did that together. And so I got a little street cred with
Do you actually have any coding experience, either one of you?
zero.
Okay, that's an important point, right?
Zero. I used plain language. I even used 11-year-old language. I wasn't sophisticated. And we ended up getting, he was like, "This is so cool. This is so fun." And then I'm like, "Well, what else do you want to do?" And he's like, "Let me think." And so the learning is different. But it's also, I think, a joyful way for parents and children to come together and not have this technology be the devil, or but understand its implications. So we held space there and had fun together doing it. And then I made my own website. I haven't even put it up, but I was just like, "Hey, Claude, can you do this?" And they were like, "Absolutely." And just, it was really fun. So I did some vibe coding.
And so you've tinkered around on the coding side, which again requires no code. Then there's the LLM, the chatbot, the large language model part of Claude, which most people will be more familiar with, similar to ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, Grok, where you're having a conversation, right? And then also Claude has Claude Cowork, which is an agent which I actually used this morning. I was trying to communicate to my team. I had this vision in my head of a spreadsheet that I wanted that would help us organize some training in this month. And I was trying to separate out a couple of unique, yeah, different ways of organizing it. And I wasn't explaining myself very well. So what I originally got back didn't encompass what I was looking for because I was probably pretty bad at describing what I wanted. And so I went back and I tried it again, and I went into Claude Cowork and I was like, "Listen, can you help me? Here's a spreadsheet draft that we created, but I failed to explain what I'm really trying to do, which is the following." And I tried again to explain it, just in natural conversation, put it into Claude Cowork, and I said, and here's a couple of additional contextual cues on why I want what I want. So the intent for using it is the following. Here's the context on why I kind of probably missed in how I articulated my needs last time. Here's how we need to use it for multiple users this time. So I think I got better at explaining the intent and the context. And then I went and made it. I just hit submit, and then I just went and made a cup of coffee, got kind of ready for the day. I walked the dog. I think I was gone maybe 15 minutes, less than that. Came back. My spreadsheet was not only done, right, but like beautiful, and it actually advanced to a degree that I hadn't even thought about, and then recommended a couple of tweaks, right? So these are different bodies or ways that just the average parent or, you know, child or, coworker could begin to play with it. But I don't know that too many, I don't know which schools are introducing this. and our kids are at different stages. Your child's education started with like long division by hand or pen and pencil, you said, right? Or pencil
Yes,
and
and he
paper.
was even taught to write in cursive.
Us
He's
too.
since moved to a school where cursive isn't required. It's only been 6 months. He does not write in cursive any longer and doesn't want to. So that gets us to and that happened with just the traditional, not including AI. That was sort of cognitive offload. Oh, if they don't need it, then I'm not going to use it. And I would like to forget that I knew how to do that. That was an intentional thing for him. He was probably like thrilled he didn't have to write in cursive. But that is one of the fears that we all have, that learned helplessness, that cognitive offloading in exchange for being able to go walk your dog and have something developed to your liking that you come back and it's ready for you and you don't have to know how to do it step by step.
Absolutely. And if we outsource that too quickly without having the basics ourselves, like I would not, if had I not grown up with some of the things you just articulated, right? And the cursive, and like you and I came from a time in the world where we did learn certain things by
Yeah.
hand, right? And I've actually put my children through a Montessori education as well as a charter school that continued to do that because we believed that those like grappling with the basic the foundational pieces would become they're essential for humans but would become even more important once technology could replicate certain things. This is my example of the exponential curve. um,
Yes.
um, because I listened to what some guys in Silicon Valley were. I'm like, where do you as I was doing executive coaching, I'm like, where do you send your kids? And they had all their kids at Montessori or Waldorf or charter schools where the basics and, using pencil and paper, doing long division, knowing the phonics, knowing the cursive, those basics, the Socratic method, having actual dialogue, reading an actual great book
Right.
from Western civilization or Eastern civilization, and then being able to have a conversation, a dialogue around it. Like that's still important. If we didn't have that, it would be harder to take the output that Claude Coworker or any other agent gets us and be able to bring good discernment to the table,
Yeah. And
right?
I can even back that up further with, our one of our favorites, Nate B. Jones. And so a shout out to his amazing podcast. If you haven't watched it, he's worth every minute that he speaks. He's really fantastic and we've learned so much from him. But that I would even go back to laying that foundation early so that even before worrying about discernment, you had the ability to say, oh, wait a second, I left a whole bunch of information out that will shape the way you create Claude co-work, right? So your agent needed that contextual information, but if you weren't able to articulate contextual information, then you couldn't direct your agent properly. So these are the skills that will be invaluable. The young people now, if they are able to fully articulate their needs, the children, we even say this, advocate for yourself. My son doesn't like to go and like push the envelope with his teachers. I'm like, you have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And those are the skills, those softer skills are going to be the skills that they employ trying to create that context to get good output, and then layering on your comment about discernment or taste to decide if they got garbage, if they got something great. I mean, how would you, if you are not a person who knew nothing about spreadsheets, it could be spit out and be like, I think this is okay. You know?
Right, right. But and I think, what I love about and truly if you I know that Nate B. Jones speaks a lot about a lot of the specific AI advancements that especially more technically minded individuals, product managers would be able to pick up on, but non-technical people like ourselves, we get so much insight into what is shifting in that space, and we then have dialogues around, well, what does
Right.
this mean then for
Well, and
us?
he puts it into context too.
He
He
does a
and
great
I
job with that.
he
Yeah.
does a really, really nice job of saying, cloud, the circular economy is happening with AI, and this matters because
Right.
even though you think, it's just the tool, it's not just the tool, it's the cloud-based system. And in
Yeah.
fact, it's an entire ecosystem to fully understand. And I mean, I have to watch them 2 or 3 times to fully absorb, and then, of course, it like a sieve, it just flies right out of my brain, but for a second, I grasp it, and I feel so good.
Well, and one of his most recent videos about how he teaches his own kids too, right? Speaks to this paradox that you were talking about with your son and that I did with my daughters. And that is one of the things is stay grounded in some of those foundational pieces. Get the learning on the long division, get the learning on the cursive, get the learning on the phonics, get the learning on the grammar, all of that, read actual books, you know, um, literally have a conversation, a debate even on the great works. Do that and then use the tools on top of it and then go from tool to thought partner to team member over time, right? But he actually mentioned there's a lot of debate right now on the use of AI and a lot of educational institutions kind of frown on. In fact, there's the colleges and the universities, and especially are scanning. They use those software to see if individuals used AI to write their essays. Of course, we don't want to outsource everything to the machine, as you were talking in terms of that cognitive offloading. And high school teachers and college teachers are saying people the skill set that what they're seeing in the classroom, the kids have lost that ability. And I don't know if that was even before AI, but AI has even accelerated it more, that um, discipline that it took to really get that foundational level. But he talks a lot about in the 70s when the electronic calculators first came out, there was a whole pushback on having calculators in the classroom because people thought that it would deteriorate our cognitive capabilities and, being able to go through and apply that to higher order things. We, in the end, so if you had just gone with calculators and not done the hard, by hand work, you would have been imbalanced, right? If you only did the by hand work and never learned to use a calculator, you'd probably be profoundly lopsided in your ability to deal with modern, advancements, right? So it is and both. But
Yes.
for like, I don't know, probably a decade, the educational establishment was debating whether, we should or we shouldn't. And what I'm worried about now, my daughter, actually, my youngest one, just applied to get into the business school. So she's in the business school. Like you get generally accepted, but you have to do a formal application your junior year, prior to your junior year, and select your major, have an interview. It's like a whole like, have you actually done the prerequisites? Have you maintained a certain GPA? What's your intent? I mean, it's a nice practice for professional preparation. She painstakingly researched and kind of like got grounded in what she believed in and what she stood for and wrote her cover letter by hand. I mean, she wrote it out herself. She didn't use any AI, but when she had the interview, at the end of the interviewer said, well, you're clearly a deep thinker. She said, and I really appreciate a lot of the insights that you shared during the course of our conversation. I have to tell you that your cover letter got flagged for AI use, but I think it's just the way that you think. you what was funny to me is that it her cover letter got flagged not because she sounded robotic, but because she sounded too good to be human.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
you know and it's like, and she's like, no, I didn't use AI, that was my that's and she's like, well, your vocabulary is very advanced. She's like, well, I went to this charter school and we did this Socratic method, and like, and I'm like, so what was her advice to you? And she said, well, in the business school we it's frowned upon to use AI, so you just want to be mindful. I don't want you to limit your vocabulary, but I want you to be mindful that we will be using the software and you could get flagged again if you use the expanded vocabulary. And it's like, okay, as a parent, I'm like, do not diminish yourself to some lower
Because you happen to be
standard.
a good writer who can structure a sentence. And just for the parents that are out there, the AI s softwares that are sold to schools to indicate if a student's used AI are looking for one thing and one thing only, and that's pattern recognition. There is nothing deeper, and good writing is in a pattern. And, if you had a really good editor, if you're quite a good writer, you will naturally be flagged. It will be unfair, and, it's just this is, in real time, the grappling situation of education is in a difficult situation right now because knowledge is available. All the knowledge is available. And it's only going to get easier to do this and gather that information quickly. So it is incumbent upon the parent to really understand what's happening with artificial intelligence, to be cautious yet optimistic. I think you can hold both of those things, like understanding what's coming, but also play with it, be friends with it, but don't rely on it. So the the thing for me is that I have a limited um, relationship with it because I feel that I would very much rely on it entirely for easy tasks. And sometimes I just think, I'm going to do it even though I can have it done for me.
Okay with the
And
struggle.
yeah, I desire difficulty, right? I want to make sure that those neural networks, those pathways remain open in my brain and that I didn't just shut them down because it was easier to cognitively offload. But I'm keenly aware of my desire to cognitively offload, right? This is why, I hardly go to the grocery store because you can have everything delivered. Well, I miss out. I miss out on community. I miss out on seeing new items. I miss out. So easy isn't necessarily always the best way either. So it's coming back to something deeply human, Leanne, is to be mindful of what you are doing. And sort of it's that metacognition. And I really want people to understand what metacognition is. And that is the ability to see how your own mind works and observe it with without judgment, and then how to manage through that knowledge and work base. And when I say your own mind, how your mind works, um, I mean, I know that I can be easily seduced into using artificial intelligence a lot. It just sounds like life would be easier, but it wouldn't be better. And I have to consciously say, today is a day where I just do this for myself.
It's funny. So there's a couple things going on, and then I want us to think about the practical things that we as parents can do around the kitchen table or the virtual kitchen table. My eldest daughter is studying abroad this semester, so it's like a virtual conversation to have with her. Just looking for those moments, right? So the pace of change is not what we are really metabolizing right now. We've ascertained that, right? And if we're going to be having kitchen table conversations, whatever those look like, we also have to be experimenting a little bit with degrees of artificial intelligence capability, which is advancing faster than we are understanding. Like the models available even today are unrecognizable from like even 6 months ago, and even like a few weeks ago, to your point earlier, that the capabilities are increasing so fast. So if we're not thoughtfully thinking about our thinking. So that's metacognition, thinking about our thinking. You can think about that. Um, you know, if we're not intentionally, just like you do with diet and nutrition, intentionally spending some time exploring, you don't have a organic lived experience to be able to then have a conversation with your child about it. You have organic lived human experience throughout your life, but you may not have experimented with different things. So that's maybe first and foremost, is like, how do we build that in? But then how do we still grapple, get the foundations as we were talking about, and then decide where we're going to continue to grapple before we use AI. Like in leadership development, we always talk about a lot of old style leaders are very, they came up through kind of a different era, and it's very command and control in the past, right? Information was at the top, you were very hierarchical. And the way that they were trained, either inside the organization or in business school, was very like, I need to tell people what to do. So there's a very simple phrase to sort of ask before you tell, right? To kind of create a more facilitated way that sounds super simple, much harder under pressure when you're hardwired to tell all the time. Well, with AI, maybe the new phrase is ask myself before I ask AI, right? Or like, what are the simple little phrases that we can help our kids anchor into so that they get the very best of it? Because my daughter said when she got that feedback, I was like, why didn't she? Because she never told me what happened out of that interview. And she's like, oh, well, because the feedback wasn't really very helpful. And I was like, why? What did they tell you? And then she told me the story. And I'm like, what was the suggestion? She's like, she didn't really have a good suggestion. She just basically said, I have a large, I'm a deep thinker with a large vocabulary and I have to be careful. I'm like, this is like,
Yeah. And she's in charge of, admissions and education. Like, that's disappointing.
it's very, and I'm, again, reflecting on how much I'm paying every semester going, like really, so it made it even more urgent for me to have different dialogues. And I'm like, well, let's think about if you're scared to explore AI because you're going to get dinged or punished, essentially, that's like what it's registering as a mental model in her head. That's the neural network, right? I could be limited if I
Yeah.
use it. I'm
Yeah.
fearful of it.
Or also, I was chatting with a colleague and someone said, well, I feel guilty using it.
Ooh, like I'm cheating.
Like I'm cheating. Like
Hmm.
because this tool exists and I write emails with this tool, I find that maybe I'm cheating or I'm not, a an author, but rather than I'm an order taker or I placed an order and it came. It's sort of like DoorDash and but you put it in a nice dish and so you made it. It's a little bit of all of that. So,
That's really funny.
but this is a discernment uh, conversation too about what you've done, which you really opened my eyes to it, was to use a large language model very basically and asking it to do things for you, like create an email or create a table or create a Excel spreadsheet, right? But the way to use it that doesn't lead to as much cognitive offloading and in fact could lead to more education and improve skills not only for yourself or your children would be to use it as a thought partner.
Right, right.
Help me look at this project with a view of, let's say, a child in South America. I live in North America. Help me understand the plight of that 11-year-old, or, asking questions that changes the perspective, gives an opportunity for then your child or my child or anyone's to have discernment, to be taught a holistic view that they wouldn't have access to any other way. And they are then being educated and partnering with. And so those are other skills.
For sure. So that's widening perception, right? Widening and percept how we perceive something also gives us a sense of whether we feel we have the agency or the power to meet the moment, or we feel overwhelmed in the moment. So if it widens our perception of a context, and then we invite it to actually challenge our thinking, poke holes in our logic, our reasoning, surface the assumptions that we are resting our entire approach on, maybe challenge it with a different assumption that might be even more powerful given the pace of change around us. Then we're flexing the muscle. If I think of AI and I think of the basic skills that we have as two different muscles. Like if I'm only building skills on one arm, I'm always using one arm all the time and I never do anything on this arm, I'm going to look really funny to begin with. Secondly, I'm not going to be able to lift. I'm not going to have that ability and strength overall. And so we've got to find ways to really focus on the reflection and the inner direction first, and then, develop that skill on the other side first. And I think over time, then have that metacognition or that ability to observe how well or how balanced are we. If we don't do that, also have family members willing to call each other on if we're overusing or underusing one side. It's easy to get pulled into institutions either, kind of pushing us away from it, or buying into some hype and then offloading everything into AI.
And so many messages for this podcast, right? There's the sitting with the information that is overwhelming and coming in and just letting it land in your body and maybe not digesting too much at once, that so that it doesn't cause overwhelm. Understanding the paradox that it isn't just that two things can be true, it's that 30 things can be true, and it can all be happening at once. And the promise and the potential harm are both real, and we are authors of that future. And that means every single one of us. This isn't for tech people. This is for anyone. And the beautiful thing about now the way things are written in real language, you don't have to be a coder to experiment and push yourself and have a conversation with AI as a thought partner rather than a sort of just slapping your name on something written by AI, because number one, it's more fun. It's also more fun. It doesn't feel good to have something done for you that you should do yourself. It feels good maybe once or twice, but after a while, you're like, ugh. I go back to my girlfriend who's like, I kind of feel guilty. Well, I think the guilt comes from not diving into the tool's potential, really.
And bringing genuine human depth to the table to begin with. So, like, as a parent, I am very, very, very grateful that I had these incredible educational environments where the girls were forced to grapple with difficulty and forced to do things by hand, and like got into that dialogue around different opinions. And you read a book, and then you facilitate a dialogue with everybody in the room having different opinions, and then you have to write an essay on it. Remember those, like, humanities courses, which, what got sidelined for a while there, and now they're making a comeback because CEOs of large corporations are now saying, give me the liberal arts people, because they know how to think. They're saying that they got the basics right. So as a parent, what can we do with the foundational skills that develop genuine human depth, where grapple before you grab for the AI? Maybe that's the phrase, right? um, Try it first yourself.
And there's
Balance.
desired difficulty, have that
Yes.
conversation with your child that when it's hard, it's good. That's happening because you're creating a new neural network. Easy has already been established. If it's easy for you, you already know how to do it. And this, the grappling, the desired difficulty is a place we must find ourselves intentionally as a
And
family, no matter which age group you're in. Yeah.
I guess that's maybe a thought to leave everybody with, and that is, design your relationship with AI very intentionally, right? Just as you might with diet or nutrition or exercise, right? Like, what's the way in which you're going to stay grounded and continue to develop yourself. Choose the difficulties so that you don't lose those neural networks, lose that capability. You're building that muscle. And then where can you courageously explore new possibilities that are changing by the week, by the day in some
The
cases.
nanosecond,
I
right?
mean, it's so hard,
It
right?
is
To
so
keep
hard.
up with
And
it.
it's also fun to find the thing that you do want to offload, and you're like, oh my gosh, this saved me time. And I can then take that time and put it into real human connection, which is the thing that we deeply need, which is to connect with each other on a personal level.
And so it's going to look for different for every individual. and every child. I'll leave you with one last story that my same daughter who got that feedback on her application to the business school was also because she's very artistic and she's done several viral posts. And so she got contacted by an organization in her community that reached out and said, would you be the marketing director and do our marketing? And so she's bringing her she's like, it's a big girl job. I got a big girl job, you know? And it's like, um, which is so exciting. And I'm like, well, this is the perfect place to bring all of the natural capabilities and the depth that you bring as a human and maybe play with how can you also experiment with some of the AI agent skills or things so that you're bringing the best of your human depth and then you direct AI. You're not being directed by AI. And that's the core, I think, in general. AI can bring us many new places, but we as humans, when we stay grounded in what we bring to the table, we can direct and also invite, challenge, and push back. And then there's a co-creative capacity
Yeah.
that who knows what it'll create. That's what I get out of my thought partnering with AI now. It's at a higher order on both sides, and I feel like we keep reaching higher levels. But because we decided how we were going to approach that individually and then as kind of family members. So maybe that's something that everyone could play with individually and with their kids.
Yeah. Wow. Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Leanne. It's, as always, a pleasure to spend time with you.
Always. And we'll see you guys next time on Deeply Human Leading. Thanks for spending this time with us. If something landed, sit with it. That pause is actually where the real work happens. And if you're navigating this shift at your organization and you'd like to bring this conversation inside your walls, go ahead and find us at deeplyhumanleading.com. If today's episode landed with you, share it with somebody that you think could really use it. The ripple starts there. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.